On behalf of CA, I welcome you here to our first public meeting related to the Columbia market study. And the study is to see and understand the market demand within the village centers. So it's not a plan, it's an analysis to understand what is their demand for, what kind of stores, what kind of office space, commercial space, and residential, and so forth. And to look across Columbia, but also to have recommendations for each village center within the context of competition and Columbia in general. And we'll also be looking at the Snowden Dobbin corridor, because that area is certainly in the mix. Things are changing there, and has a lot of uses that weren't around when the villages were conceptualized. So we want to make sure that we are looking in a holistic way. And so that is why we're doing the study. The results will be a factual basis, and the consultant will be talking to us in a little bit about the recommendations, the kinds of things that will come out of this. But knowing what the demand is very important, before you do further planning or zoning, and so that's very important. And also tell us what is the role for CA, what would be the role of county, what policies or regulations might have to change, what investments could be made to spur the kinds of things that we want, if there are, if that's necessary. So I think it's a great opportunity for us. We have partnered, CA is partnered to do this study with the county, and two agencies of the county are working directly with us as partners. One is the Economic Development Authority, and the other is Planning and Zoning. So I would like to turn the microphone over to Bill Mackey, who will be speaking on behalf of Department of Planning and Zoning.
This study directly implements paper policy in Plan Howard 2030 adopted by the council, and that policy is 5.8C if you're interested in it. The county is interested not only in the results of the study to learn about demand and what sorts of things might be wanted here and what sorts of things might be oversupplied, those ideas, but also this will act as a foundation and background when we start our own county initiative to look at the zoning across Newtown. As part of Plan Howard, we talked about different ways to implement ideas in that plan, and one of them is a comprehensive look at Newtown zoning. And that process will be considered and we'll start to take a look at that after this study is complete. We'll use the information of the study to help us decide maybe what process to take, what would be a good way to look at it. So we're excited about that. And Jenny, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to hearing what you all have to say too.
So I would like to do some introductions of Tom Moriarity, and then he, in a moment, will introduce his team. So Tom Moriarty, how many people heard Tom Moriarty 3 years ago when he spoke about minding the store at Oakland? He talked about how retail works in the community. So that's the same man, Tom Moriarty. And we have selected his firm to undertake this study. Tom Moriarty has more than 30 years of experience in mixed-use development, commercial area management, downtown revitalization strategies, retail programming, and historic preservation. He's a special focus on redevelopment revitalization of commercial districts. And he will introduce his team members in just a moment.
Thank you, Jen. Can everybody hear me okay without the microphone?
Yes.
Okay, great. And can everybody see all right? Where should I stand so you can see? How's it? Okay. Well, as Jane said, my name is Tom Moriarty. I was very honored to be invited to be the first speaker in your speaker series 3 years ago, a little more than 3 years ago, November 10th of 2010. And we had a fascinating evening that night, I think. We had a very big turnout, and that was my first exposure to the level of engagement that exists in Columbia. This is a very involved and smart community. And as somebody who was a great admirer of James Rouse and who did work in partnership with the Rouse Company many years ago on another project that I worked on, I have enormous respect for the original vision of this place, for the parts of that vision that are still important to people, and we've heard about that in some of our meetings over the last couple of weeks. And also in thinking about what Mr. Rouse would be looking at today, because he was not somebody who was afraid of change. He was always looking forward to new opportunities, and given the original vision for Columbia and the population that was anticipated and where you are, I think it's timely for us to be saying, well, where do we stand today? And what are the opportunities that are out there? And how can we begin to look ahead as part of this ongoing sequence? I have 3 other folks working with me. Tom Lavash, who is not with us tonight, but who you'll see at the next public meeting from Washington, D.C., and Patty Folan. Patty, if you could stand. Patty is from Folan Consulting in Pittsburgh. Patty, Tom, and I worked together for about 15 years at a company called ERA in Washington. We had a long work relationship, friendship, very good collegial relationship. And then Bob Gibbs is somebody else that I've known for many years. Bob is a nationally recognized specialist in retail and national chain-affiliated retail particularly. So Gibbs Planning Group will be working with us as well as we look down the line once we've identified the market at what seems to fit well here and how that matches with the location criteria that some people have. Now, I'm going to be working on retail, as you would guess from the name of my company, and some of the industrial components, light industrial manufacturing, flex space uses along the GE, Dobbin, Snowden, Parkway corridor, which we created a new acronym, GEDS, which you may have heard. We're floating it out there now, so please adopt it, because it's shorter to say. But that'll be part of my focus. Tom Lavash will be working on housing and the opportunity, should we find it, for a hotel. Given the new product that's in the market, we'll see where that goes, but there's a possibility it might go somewhere. Patty will be working on retail primarily and the office component. Thank you, Patty. Because there is an evolving office market in this area, and we're very interested in some possible niche office specialty uses that are evolving because of proximity to NSA or maybe other things that really only work in this area or might work. We don't know yet. We're just starting to figure that out. We've heard some things. And then Bob will be working on the retail component as well. Now, this is not specifically a retail study, although the village centers do have a number of opportunities, we think, in retail categories as we rethink how they fit where the market is today. But we also want to look at the opportunities for housing development, for office development in the village centers and in the GEDS corridor, as well as the whole sort of how they all relate together. Now, in looking at the history of the village centers, a couple of things I found very interesting. They were not intended to be replicas of each other. There were repeated elements like the grocery store anchor. But James Rouse's original vision was there would be differentiating uses in each of the village centers that made them a little different, would take people from place to place. And I think over time they evolved and revolved in some ways where they became more alike. The grocery anchor and a lot of the same kinds of uses. Jane mentioned a couple of those. Some have gone away because the industry's changed. I can't buy a Super 8 tape player tape anymore. They don't exist. So things do evolve. But there is a certain element of commonality, and part of what we're going to be looking at in the market study is what makes sense now. And that question about the average grocery store size, most of the grocery stores here are in the 30 to 35,000 square foot range, which was the size at the time the centers were built. But the industry's evolved. There are huge ones, there are larger ones, there are specialty niche ones that Trader Joe's averages about 25,000 square feet. There's a wonderful concept out of North Carolina called Fresh Market. It's about 25,000 square feet, but they're specialty stores, and they carry a more limited number of those SKUs that we talk about. So the industry is not as homogeneous as it once was, and it's evolved as well. So we want to have in mind, because of what we've got today, where do we stand? So this market analysis will evaluate and project the conditions to say what makes sense in these village centers as they exist today, as they're different from each other, and where they have overlapping providers of goods and services. And I know from the discussion we had 3 years ago, grocery store is a big issue, and we understand that. But we want to try and marry where the market stands today to where is the industry today and how does it fit. So we'll be looking, as we said, at residential, retail, office, hotel, and light industrial flex space use, particularly for the GEDS corridor. Now, the timing of this, we started in late October. We haven't been going very long. We've had a series of meetings with certain stakeholders that involve property owners, brokers, the village managers, county officials, people within the Columbia Association. So we're just sort of scratching the surface to get some depth in the background of it. We also have a treasure trove of great current information. Because we're data nerds, we like to see a lot of facts and a lot of information. So we won't be gathering as much of that on the data side because you've already done it. There's a superb market study, a couple of market studies done for Route 1, for Columbia, that are available, publicly available, and we're using those as a very current and recently updated point of departure from the analysis. So we'll be analyzing all those things. The project began in late October. We're going to finish by the end of April, so it's fairly short fuse, and it's going to occur in 3 phases. Those phases are, the first is information gathering, and that's October through December. We've conducted site visits. We've been to all the village centers a couple of times, and a lot of canvassing around in the GDS corridor area, the old GE site and surrounding, and the competition that's technically outside the study area. But many of those elements were not here when Columbia was originally envisioned and evolved over the first 20, 25 years. So we've been to the site. We have been reviewing existing plans, studies, market information we've already gathered. We've had some of those stakeholder meetings, and here we are tonight, a listening and learning public meeting. And I will stop soon so we can actually listen. The second phase is the market revitalization analysis. That will be from January, it's actually going to start this month, through mid-March of 2014, where we will use that information and what we've learned in our discussions and site work to define market areas in a competitive context, to determine the amount of available demand today and projected demand over time for various kinds of uses in those categories we talked about. We'll summarize those, and then we'll hold an initial market findings public meeting like this one, except we'll be presenting that night and want to get your reactions. That meeting will be, we haven't fixed a date yet, it'll be in late March. So and we do hope for, and I fully expect, given the nature of Columbia, and as you know, all of you guys, you're smart, you care about this, we want your reactions, and we'll fold those in and say, if we missed something and we misinterpreted something, has something new evolved that's come up. For the next phase, that is the major piece of the work. The final part, as Jane mentioned, will be recommendations and strategies. That will be completed between March and mid-April, with time for a third public meeting where we'll talk about some of the draft suggestions about what might need to happen to make things work better, to address some of those market opportunities, and then document it all in a final report. But there will be 2 more of these public meetings, and we very much hope those will be interactive and will provide some response from you to keep us honest and make sure we haven't missed an opportunity. Okay, so in the same vein as the pop quiz, I wanted to talk about a couple of industry rule of thumbs as they relate to Columbia. So the original vision of Columbia in the history, which was written in 2008, said that each of the village centers was conceived to represent 3,000 to 4,000 households, goods, and services. So we already know, and I neglected to mention, Patty is a former Rouse Company employee who did work in the real estate feasibility and retail group. And she said when she worked here earlier in her career, they were already rethinking within the Rouse Company, how can we tweak the village centers to make them work better? So the original envision of 3,000 to 4,000 households being well served was already being rethought. And as you know, through the plans that have been developed for the villages, you're looking at the future as well and saying, well, how do we want this to change? What should we be thinking about? What makes sense? So with that in mind, if you look at that 3,000 to 4,000 households, that's really what the industry says will support a 7-Eleven or a convenience store. Now that industry has also changed. If you think about CVS and Rite Aid and some of the drugstores, it's not like the old days where it was the pharmacy. It's now the pharmacy, the card shop, the tobacco store. You can buy film, if you still use film. Who buys film anymore? You can buy toys and seasonal items. You can buy grocery items. So the 1,500 square foot pharmacy has now become an 8,000 to 10,000 foot multi-purpose retail store. And the same thing's happening in the grocery industry, where you can get your prescription, you can get your paper goods, you can buy your seasonal products, buy your Christmas decorations or your Halloween decorations, or whatever else you're looking for. All these stores are selling a lot of the same stuff. So that size idea has evolved. The 10,000 households for a grocery store, it's a long-standing industry standard, but that's also evolving. People are saying, well, wait a minute, what does it take to get a Whole Foods? Well, they don't really care about rooftops, households. They want 200,000 population, and they're actually more interested in a higher percentage of college graduates than they are in household income. They care about household income, but they know that the value set that they sell at a premium is appealing to college graduates. So they look at that and say, even if somebody doesn't have a high household income, they're more likely to pay more for fresh and organic because they believe that's important. And that tends to correlate with education level. They also want a lot of road access and all that. Their average store size today is about 45,000 square feet. Their flagship store in Austin is about 81,000 square feet. It's got a cooking school in it, some other stuff. But they aren't going to repeat it. Redlands we talked about, they want large size. They can't fit just anywhere because the store itself is 2.5 acres. You know, it's a big, big, big store. So they need that, and they need a lot of space for parking, and they want growing population and employment because they want to look at that growth. They want to know there are going to be a lot of spenders there. Their average store size is about 110,000, but this store is the size of the flagship in New York State at 136,000. What does it take to get a hotel? To make it financeable, you have to have 65% annual occupancy on average. That means 2/3 of the rooms are full every night of the year. They may change, the price may change, but if you're substantially below that, it's going to be hard to get somebody to underwrite. If you're substantially over that, there's probably room in the marketplace. We'll be exploring that here. One of the things we're seeing in the industry is affordable product like the Hampton Inn that's open and the Hilton Garden Inn that are new, affordable, very nice product. I stay in those hotels a lot when I'm traveling. They're very affordable, clean, safe, all the good things about it. Could something like that fit near the hospital? It's closer there where there may be extended stay opportunities. Are there other opportunities where it might fit? We don't know yet. We'll be exploring that. What does it take to get an office building? Well, you know, real estate goes through cycles, and right now, office is hard to finance. Several years ago, it was hard to finance a hotel when that market kind of rebounded. So these things kind of go up and down. 5, 8 years ago, before the downturn, developers said, we can't touch a project without an internal rate of return of 20%. Don't even talk to us. That's come down a little. The industry has evolved. People have said, I need to keep developing. I'm going to take less or expect less on my return. But they want pre-lease. They want some pre-lease tenancies. Hopefully up to 20% of the leasable area. And they may look for a specialty niche. That's where, this is not the only one by any stretch, but because of where you are and because of requirements for security-related service providers, we think that could be something that could evolve here, probably in small pieces, and that may be something we want to explore, not so much for the village centers that I think are going to become consumer services, doctors, attorneys, accountants, small-scale professional offices that are a good fit with the neighborhood serving mix. But I think we do want to look at opportunities along the GBS board for the development. So housing development, what does it take to build housing? Well, you've got a number of these things. Howard County, we've heard a lot about schools in our discussions so far, but Howard County still has an extraordinarily strong reputation for quality schools. And that attracts people. They want people make decisions about where to live based on the quality of schools. That's an asset you have. You do have growing population. It's modest, but it's positive growth. So that's a good thing. And you do have qualified buyers and renters. So these markets are growing. I also know, looking around the villages, I see a lot of older housing stuff. That, you know, T111 plywood exteriors and stick built, not built for the ages, not a 1,000-year structure, and probably in some cases approaching the end of useful life. So we also want to think about what about replacement housing? And what does that mean? Who lives there? Who wants to live here? What are they looking for? What are the housing types that you have? How is it evolving? And in particular, although we're not studying the downtown area, there's a lot of new housing that's been planned for in the downtown, and that's a good thing. So we would hope that this will be folded in about how do you get more housing? So that's the sort of things we'll be looking at. I wanted to end with a pop quiz question. This is one of my favorite questions. I asked this a few years ago. We hear a lot about online retail and the rate of growth of online retail. Who would like to speculate what percentage of gross and total retail sales in the United States, not automobiles, for automotive products, that throws it off. But of all the other retail, what percentage of sales last year would you guess were online? 40, or 20, or 40? 6. Okay. This is often the consultant's favorite answer. It depends. There are multiple sources, but it actually is somewhere between 5.2 and 7%. Depends on who you ask. Online retailing says 5.2. There was another, and these are all special studies. The one that said 7% had a smaller national sample size, and that always makes me a little nervous. But the point being, it's not 20 and it's not 40. It's more than 90%, almost somewhere between 93 and 95% of sales still happen in stores. So when the comments come out of the press about the store is doomed, that there's no future for retail, all that, we can't disregard online sales because they're very important and they are in fact growing by double digits. One of the projections is by 2017, it's going to grow by half, another 45%. So it's growing enormously every year, but it's not and won't be anytime in the near future the dominant form of transferring goods from person to person. It is evolving, it is changing, but for all the publicity you get, it's not the dominant form of retail activity. So that's just something to keep in mind as we look ahead. The village centers are not dead. We're going to make them better, and everybody's not doing things online yet. We're doing it some of the time. Okay, well with that, we're going to, as the project moves ahead, and we talked about those 3 stages, the market findings, we'll be posting things through Columbia Association in partnership with the county as we go through those 3 steps. So you'll be able to go to this website and check on what's been posted as it's accepted. And we'll be doing that with the presentations as well. So you'll be able to go back and look at this or find what you want to find and then see the products that we're producing as we present them, get feedback, modify them to be sure we're all in agreement, and then post them on this site. So that you'll be able to track the project through the Columbia Association website with this link.